So we are going to proceed with the presentation of Michelle Perelló. She has working on EU policies and funding programs since 2003 and specialized on regional development, research and innovation on education projects. She earned a PhD in industrial engineering, and her research field is social innovation, participatory processes for policy making, co-creation, and citizen science. In 2009, she founded Consulta Europa Projects and Innovation with the aim of developing innovation and capacity building projects which could support and foster a development of Canary Islands, which was smart, sustainable, and inclusive. We have seen that Canary Islands are on the top of the list, so you are doing a good job. So Consulta Europa actually acts as a local development organization, connecting and engaging with organizations from the academia, the industry, the policymaking, and the civil society. Consulta Europa has participated and led European projects on these topics, and Michelle will bring us with some results from the Horizon 2020 project that Consulta Europa is leading, called Ruralization. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Oscar. So good afternoon to everybody. As Oscar has said, I will present you some of the results of our Horizon 2020 project Ruralization, whose title is The Opening of Rural Areas to Renew Rural Generations, Jobs and Farms. And I would like to give you some figures about the project. The project started in May 2019 and is a 4-year project funded by the Horizon 2020 program. We have a budget of 6 million euro and we involved 18 partners from 12 different European countries. We have universities, but also other type of NGO and association collaborating with us, as long as companies as Consulta Europa. In few words, I can say that the ruralization focuses on 2 main aspects that could drive the regeneration of rural areas. One aspect are young people, of course, because of population decline and aging of population in rural areas. And the other focus for us is access to land, because so far access to land is really restricted to too few people and few organizations. And we identified access to land as a key element to foster regeneration of rural areas. Why, when we talk about young people, actually, we also talk about 3 types of new generation that we would like to support in coming back to rural areas. And we have divided this new generation into 3 groups. The first groups are newcomers, which are people that come to the countryside from outside the region, so from outside the rural area. Mostly they come from the city to work or do some business there, which is not related to agriculture. So newcomers go to rural areas to start a new life there, but they are not related to farming or agriculture. Then we have a second group, which are new entrants into farming. In this case, indeed, these are people who start a new farm or take over an existing farm from another family. In most cases, they are newcomers, so they are new to rural areas. But sometimes they simply decide to switch business from another type of business into farming. And then we work with a third type of group, which are successor, which are people that take over a farm, basically from their parents or as part of family business. So we have worked, as you will see soon, with these 3 groups in particular. And then as a transversal issue, we address young people. So the perspective is it's quite an easy and logical one. So the idea is that as soon as we manage to create more opportunities for new generation, more young people will move into the rural areas, and this will generate in additional and new economic activities. So we will generate a virtuous cycle in the rural areas. What we have done in the project, I mean, the activities that I will share with you today are basically on one side, the foresight analysis and the inventory of dreams of young people in rural area. And then on the other side, the case studies that we have built on the 3 profiles that I just described you. So I start with the foresight analysis and dream inventory. This has been really the objective of one specific work package. And the idea was to firstly identify and assess trends that will affect rural areas in the coming years, then profile rural areas that are destination of the dreams of young people for the future. So rural areas where young people are dreaming to actually live in and build a life there. And then what we have done, we have made an analysis of how the trends and the dream can actually reveal potential for the development of rural areas and how policies should address this potential. So going to the trend analysis, this has been a huge work. We started by considering more than 1,300 trends that we come out through literature review and other type of sources, which was not only research-based. And we have been screening across these trends to get to a selection of trends. These trends has been discussed. So after the first screening, we came out with 195 trends, and then we discussed this with the 20 regional future workshops. This is the way we call it. So workshops in 20 different regions with different stakeholders. So we have put together people and we have said, we have this type of trends. How much do you think this trend is relevant for your region, for the rural area of your regions? So this has been the part of the trend. And then on the other side, we have built an inventory of future dreams of young people. To do this, basically, we have involved through a survey and interviews over 2,000 young people in the 20 different regions which are represented in the projects. And we have asked them about their dreams, what is their expectation for the future, not only in terms of destination, so the place, but also in terms of their livelihood, accommodation, and lifestyle. And this is what we call the dream recipe. So the issue was not only asking young people, what is your dream job, but also what is the type of accommodation that you would like to live in? What is the type of lifestyle that you want to adopt? And then we have also asked them about their obstacles. So what is the obstacle and the challenge that you see with respect to this future that you are imagining? So the results of the first part of the work were the trends. So out of the 195 trends, we came out with 10 mega trends, 20 trends, and 20 weak signals. What is the difference? Basically, mega trends are like big trends that affect somehow all territories, so are less context specific, are more generally. These mega trends might in the future decline and go to become only a trend, and then in a long future become only weak signals. You see here the cards for each trend that we have developed. Actually, on the project website and on the webpage ruraltrends.eu, you can find much more detail for each trend. And you can see here some with which you are for sure familiar, like aging population, climate change, migration patterns, and the sustainability transition. So these are the mega trends that we know somehow will affect all territories in Europe in the next 10 years. Then we have trends, which are also important and affect most of the region, but are more context specific than the mega trends. And you see here that we have several, like circular economy, digital economy, the diversification of rural economy, the importance of food tourism or local paradigm, remote work, for instance, rural tourism. So these are trends that we can already observe, and they could become mega trends in the future, or they could decline in importance. So we cannot really know what will happen, but we have at least an idea of how the situation in rural areas, which elements could affect the regeneration of rural areas in the coming years. And then we have weak signals, which are like phenomenon which have been observed in specific regions, but not all of the regions, of course, and that again might evolve into trends in the future. You see here, for instance, community-based action, the eco-villages, the do-it-yourself movement, educational farms, heritage tourism, and so on. Please take into account that all these trends are, we have considered those trends that can affect most rural areas. Yeah, so it's not like generic trends only. So you see here that we have a lot of weak signals. Okay, and We move to the second part. Then you will see we are putting together the trends with the dream inventory to try to provide policy recommendation. As for the dream inventory, basically we have different cases. We have the cases of young people that are willing to live in the city center, young people willing to live in the city area outside the center, or in the suburb in a city area. And then we have, according to our survey, at least 30% of the young people which have been surveyed, which are considering moving to a rural area, which can be a rural area close to a city, or a rural village, or a remote rural area. Yeah. For each dream inventory, as I mentioned before, we have asked young people what is their livelihood recipe, meaning which type of work you will work in or you're considering to choose as a career, which type of accommodation are you envisaging for your future, and what is your lifestyle recipe. So what are the hobbies that you would like to have, and which are also the value that you will somehow you feel attached to. And then we have asked about obstacles. So what are the difficulties that you see might affect your future? And we see that, for instance, in the case of rural village, type of work and jobs that young people with this dream would like to pursue are related to transportation and storage, agriculture, forestry and fishing, trade, repair of a motorcycle, electricity, gas, and air conditioning supply, accommodation and food service activity, and education. There is an economic activity which is common, for instance, to the three types of rural areas that the young people surveyed as in common, which for instance are the services related to waste and water supplies and waste management. And this is, for instance, a sector that would be of interest for all the young people. Then when it comes to the location and the accommodation, most people are looking for an independent house with possibly a yard or a garden. So, and most people are considering refurbishing old houses, renovating old houses and independent houses. When it comes to obstacles, we have seen different types of obstacles, most of which are, of course, related with the job opportunity, the difficulties in getting job opportunities, but not only. So many young people were wondering about the difficulties to create relations with the rest of the society, so to have actually a social self-satisfactory life. So you see here the different profile for these different rural areas. And what we have done basically was to put together the trends with the dream inventory and try to identify for each type of areas that we have addressed. The city areas, we have actually put it all together in one category, but then we have the three different rural areas. So rural areas close to city, rural villages, and remote rural areas. And we have identified which are the top 5 promising trends that we think might affect these different type of areas, which are the top 5 actions that can benefit from these trends, and the actors that should put forward these actions. And we have thought about the actions, not only in general, so to support the dream in general, but to support the different elements of the recipe of this dream. So it was very interesting for me this morning in one parallel session to hear about the importance, for instance, of social capital, because the issue is not only to support young people in finding or creating a job in the rural areas. We need to help them finding the accommodation they are really looking for and being able to build the social life, the personal life that they're aiming to. So in this sense, we have identified top 5 action, top 5 for each type of category. So for the accommodation, for the livelihood, and also for the lifestyle. And we have identified the top 5 actors that could realize those actions. Without going into much detail of each area, all this work is available on the project website, so you can go through it. What we have highlighted is that the importance of having a multi-level governance approach in which you have this horizontal integration that Jael was mentioning. So where we have also the involvement of the policy, the public sector, but also the private sector. And we actually aim also to support a vertical integration where the European level is working together with the national and with the local level. And why do we say so? Because as we have seen before, most of the trends are very context specific. So we really need the local policymaker or national policymaker to be able to answer to those trends and react or prevent those trends, but at least to be aligned with their policies to the trend that will affect those specific areas. So main lessons that we have learned from this first part of the work is that there are thousands of developments that affect rural future and rural regeneration. So as I just said, the context is very important. All type of areas are targets for the future dreams of young people. This was for us quite surprising when we made a survey. So we have really people willing to commute to a rural area close to the city, but also to a rural village and also to a remote rural area. So there is really a very alive rural dream across young people, and we need to target these different type of rural areas and support the rural dreams of young people in the different areas. Each type of region has a profile in terms of livelihood, accommodation, lifestyle dream, which makes even more easy to design policies that can address all these aspects, or that can address at least part of those aspects. And yeah, as I just said, the last lesson I think is about the need really to have alignment of policies, both at local and national level, and also of supporting the collaboration with the private sector. Okay, I move to the second part of the work that we have done, which has been building case studies on these three profiles of new generation, which are the newcomers, the new entrants into farming, and successors. We have created 10 case studies for each category, and then we have made a confrontation with less promising practices. So we have taken the good practices and the somehow failure cases, and we have confronted those and made a comparative analysis to make our conclusion. You see here the map of the case studies that we have built. So they were really taken from all the ruralization countries. And basically, without going into detail of the case studies, the conclusion that we have made in our case is that all the three profiles contribute to rural regeneration. So having newcomers, new entrants into farming, and successors contributes to rural regeneration. I'm almost done, thanks. And we need at policy level to really work along all the type of new entrants, and in particular try to support innovative organizational models. So policies so far, both local and national and somehow European, are not really addressing the diversity of doing business and entering in rural areas that young people are already implementing or asking for. So we made some example of policies, concrete actions that we recommend for policymakers, like supporting the establishment of networks to sensitize skilled students on rural jobs, so bring more rural jobs into curricula, supporting multi-actor governance, supporting farm incubators, and so on. So in general, support new organizational model and business model. Also, as policy recommendation, we have included the importance of supporting the adoption of social, technological, and non-technological innovation in the policies, because these are also driving elements for rural regeneration, and also support the transferability of practices. There is a lot of work done so far in Europe, and we need to be able to create ways to transfer the knowledge that we have acquired across the different rural areas in Europe. Very quickly, in 1 minute, we need to know for whom we are making our recommendation. And I think, having worked in many European projects, sometimes this is the element that we are missing. So we create a recommendation, but we should be able to fit it into the different policies. For sure, an important one is the long-term vision for rural areas that the Commission has launched, which is organized around 9 different flagships initiatives. And I think we have space to address different of these initiatives. And when we are providing policy recommendation, we really need to be able to make the connection with initiatives the Commission, for instance, is putting forward. You see here some of the recommendations that I made that we have seen for the work we have been doing in ruralization, but for sure there are others for the work that you are doing. Also, another important recommendation for me is that we all take part to the Rural Pact and try to bring our contribution as stakeholders to the work that the Rural Pact is doing. And then this is a slide we have from the European Commission. We had our review meeting with the European Commission, so they were wondering about the work that we have done and try to provide recommendation. And these were the recommendation for us for ruralization, but I think it was useful to share it with you. So basically they ask us to provide specific recommendation now to attract and retain young people in rural areas and to think of this vertical integration. So the European Commission is really striving to look to have more synergies between their policies and the member states' policies and the local policies, to highlight the gender dimension, to learn or think or understand how the access to the Common Agriculture Policy Fund can be improved for newcomers, because existing farmers, so actors which are already working in rural areas, know very well how to access these funds, but newcomers apparently are quite excluded so far. And thinking that we have to connect the recommendations with the 2 main priorities that the Commission has so far with respect to rural areas, which are food security and renewable energy. And my last recommendation is the long-term vision envisaged to propose to have a rural lens to see, to understand, to prove actually the European policies. So each European policy will be asked now to see if they somehow contribute to rural development. And I propose that we all try to support the idea of having a youth lens, so that we make sure that all European policies are actually supporting young people in general, and in particular in rural areas. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Michelle.